Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Thriving Minds podcast with your host, Walter Parada, where we strive to provide you with empowering talks so you can live to thrive. I hope you find yourself in the right frame of mind, focusing on all the things within your control. All right, so today's episode, we're going to be talking about losing something is an opportunity to get stronger in other areas. So the loss of anything that we once had can be a very difficult experience to go through. Sometimes even devastating, that shakes us to our core. The people in our lives, things that bring us comfort, our abilities that we once had, all these things can be a shock to us that can leave us frozen in disbelief. And it makes it difficult to understand what happened and why it happened. The more foundational it is to who we are and how we operate, it can make us question ourselves and how to move on from it, or even if we can. Sometimes this could be because we assume that what has always been there will continue to be there going forward. We lean on it more and more that it becomes ingrained in how we see ourselves. Or it could be because we take it for granted. Think of many things that we might fail to notice its importance, like being able to drive yourself anywhere you want to, being able to walk or get up and sit down when you choose to, or even being able to breathe on your own. These are all things that are so critical to our independence, and no longer having those abilities can make us feel stripped of our power. It's the same concept related to the important people in our lives. While we know that our time is limited, there's still a bit of the thinking of we have so much time with our loved ones. And when we no longer have them, it's a very unexpected and difficult moment in our lives. It's natural to have those feelings of regret, of all the things that were not done with the people that were once there for you. Maybe if you appreciated and cherished them, it might be different. Who knows? This goes the same way for other things that you may have lost. If only I was thankful for what I had. When this does happen, give yourself time to really process it, to confront what happened, and anger, sadness, and general pain will be felt. Be able to work through it instead of trying to suppress it or ignore it, because it's only going to get louder if you try to do so, and it's going to linger. Take it head on, and part of what can happen is ruminating. You may want to move on from it as quickly as possible. Thoughts will occur of, what if I would have done something different? Then things would be different. Maybe I would have still had what I lost, but maybe I would have created more memories or really taken more time, cherished the things that I lost, the people that I lost. All of this is part of resisting change. Give yourself enough time to grieve, to not need to be strong all the time, or in this case, most of the time. To better come to terms with what happened. Even things like losing your job, losing your house, or losing what gave you purpose. But this is actually a great time to assess and reevaluate things. Avoid getting hung up on why it happened, because it can keep you trapped in that vicious cycle of dwelling that makes it so hard to move forward. It's fine to ponder why it happened, but staying there will keep you wondering about all the different possibilities of why. Sometimes we may never know why, or maybe we do, but much later on. When you can pivot and focus on what now, what can I do about what I'm currently facing, then your mind is actively working on finding solutions that can help you overcome the challenges. It literally changes your brain's mode from looking at the past to now looking at what's right in front and what's ahead of you. Maybe it's an injury that blindsided you, and the surprise of it has you in a bit of a shock. The natural reaction is, why or how did this happen? Why me? Why now? I did everything right. Some of this thinking comes from a certain level of fairness that is expected. Meaning, if I do so much work, if I prepare myself well enough, then I'm guaranteed victory, or at least my safety. Nothing is guaranteed, only how likely things will play out. You could be in the best shape of your life, only to suffer a torn ligament in your knee. That's just how certain things unfold. So get out of or avoid that mode of why me, because self-pity is going to creep in, deceiving you into comfort, and it's really weakening your grit and resiliency. It's okay to have a little bit of the why me feeling, but quickly move on to what can I do about it now, as this feeds your want to rebound from what is then going to be seen as an opportunity. This is such a pivotal point that gives way to the transformation that you're going to undergo. It all starts with the mind. And what you choose to focus on is the results that you will eventually earn. The initial mourning, the grieving period, then starts to evaluate, what can I do? What do I have to work with? What can I rely on? What areas can be strengthened? And what am I working towards? The actionable thinking is priming you to want to take action and improve yourself in your current situation. By assessing what you have, you better understand how to manage yourself in the situation you encounter. This gets you to not dwell as much on what was lost. And now you have more time and energy for all the other areas that maybe were not so heavily dependent on or just not used very much. An interesting thing is, when a person loses their sight, their other senses become stronger because they're forced to rely on them a lot more heavily. You know, if you just take a look at the fictional character of the Daredevil, the superhero in the Marvel Universe, he's a great example. While losing your sight or another one of your senses does not heighten the other senses like Daredevil. So just a little background on Daredevil. His really superpower is that his other senses are so heightened, they're so sensitive that he knows how to fight crime by feeling, hearing, touching. And all this happened because he lost his vision. So while initially it was very devastating news that he received, losing his sight, it actually turned out to be a great strength because all his other areas got stronger. So while losing your sight or another one of your senses does not heighten the other senses like Daredevil, the other senses do get stronger as now there's more energy allocated to them. Sight is controlled by the occipital lobe, located in the back of the brain. But when sight is lost, that part of the brain is now diverting energy into other parts. Our brains are neuroplastic. It adapts to changes that occur. And this is so fascinating of how we can adapt to our circumstances to overcome and in the process get better. To give a better idea how it works, MRIs were taken of people who were blind since birth or before the age of 3, and their MRIs were compared to people who had normal visions. What was found was that blind individuals had sensory pathways that the sight people did not have. The MRIs of the blind person's brains had more enhanced pathways than a person with full use of their vision. This just shows the brain can reroute itself by creating new pathways and that your other senses become enhanced to compensate for the missing one. So just because you lose your sight or you lose any one of your other senses, it's not like automatically everything else becomes stronger. It's just that you have to force yourself to use those other senses that really enhance them. Knowing this can help us out when we face losing something or someone of significance. It does not matter if you lose a shirt that you barely use, but if you lost where you live, this is a huge blow because you rely on it so heavily to keep you safe, to have a place to rest and relax, a place to eat and grow, a place where you create memories, a place where you live your life. This really is a part of you, where you're connected to them because of the moments that you had there. That initial phase is difficult, but once you can kind of gather yourself, you can rewire the brain to divert energy into what can you do about it, to find the solution. This approach consistently gets you to make the best of the situation that you're in. Some of it will be your own doing and some of it won't. When you can avoid looking for who or what to blame, the more progress will be made. Finding fault and hanging on to it is only going to drag you down. When you can be conscious of this, you ensure that you're focused on solutions and not excuses. So you're using your energy to the best of its ability, to the best of your ability. To get to this point, though, it requires repeatedly being conditioned to it. Having a simple saying when adversity strikes is a real ally that gets you to focus on the proper thing. Without one, so many negative thoughts can run rampant that leads to many self-defeating words and actions that just snowball for the worse. When you can say simple, empowering words to yourself, this can help to maintain your composure in very flustering situations, where you can better think through things to respond effectively and not just react. It doesn't need to be something extremely positive, because sometimes that can be really annoying. You're trying to lie to yourself almost. But something that brings a certain level of calmness. Instead of saying everything's going to be all right, it could be saying, stabilize the situation you're in, or how can I respond effectively, or how can I stop the bleeding, how can I make things less worse. This gives a neutral tone that can help settle things down. Follow this up with an action that ingrains those words that are said, as it's going to make it stick better, that leads to an outstanding preconditioned response. Remember, response, not reaction. Think of how paramedics and firefighters respond to dire situations. They don't just jump in there. They've been trained for that, to be the most prepared they can to properly handle the different scenarios. And in the process of this, it's getting exposure to intense situations in a more bite-sized amount, where you can focus on a few things to grasp what's going on. This makes it less overwhelming to really gain something useful out of it. The better and more that you can acclimate yourself to adversity or challenges, the more confidence you gain being in those situations and navigating them. With enough simulated experiences, your mind creates a mental map of how you handled yourself in those circumstances to assess what you did well, what was done poorly, and how to improve on it the next time. And with that mental map, it then becomes about getting a little bit better each time, and it all compounds to allow you to handle yourself in the situations extremely well. Simply put, the better you prepare, the better the results are going to be. So when those big moments come, there's less thinking, which means less likely to panic, as that reaction becomes overridden through the muscle memory that was developed based on what you practice for over and over again in those scenarios. For most of us, when there's a huge fire, we run to safety. But a firefighter, they run to put it out, and they're looking for people in danger to help them get to safety. Through the repeated practice that they go through is what gives them the confidence and the ability to execute on their objective while minimizing the danger that they put themselves in. It's not just reckless abandon that they operate to save people or to put out the fire, but it's understanding the viable options that they have. And you can do something similar to where you go over certain scenarios, even if it's just mentally, thinking about how it would play out and what you would do, or you can even visualize it. This invokes a sense of fear and panic that you work through. And if and when that moment comes, you become acclimated enough to better respond, to just go over certain things, to work through what you would do. What would you do if you had a car accident, an accident at home, or had something very valuable stolen? Sometimes these moments feel extremely debilitating because no thought has been given to them. Have you ever heard somebody say, "I never thought this would happen to me"? Well, at least when you think it might happen to you, you have enough understanding of the risks that lie out there. I'm actually willing to go down that route to explore potential bad outcomes, as this helps alert me to what could happen and what can be done if it does happen. I've had people tell me when I ask them about this, and they'll say, no, let's not think like that. or we'll deal with it when it comes. But that's such a hanging on hope with no action, no preparation, that when it does happen, it's too much for them to handle it. Almost as if to say, as long as we avoid talking about what potentially could go wrong, then we stop it from happening. That's not how it works. This is just lack of foresight that makes it so difficult to overcome hardships. Instead, go down that rabbit hole to where you're aware of what could happen, the risks that lie out there, the bad things that might happen. And in this case, it's simulating scenarios where you know what to say and what to do. These small things of saying something empowering and following it up with certain actions helps to create those new pathways where you can better handle challenges. And through consciously thinking of what you're going to say and what you're going to do, it makes other areas stronger before you even need them. Try doing something different just to test yourself, to experience that uncomfortableness and see how you do. It's natural when you have a hard time that frustration begins to mount. And this is great to go through. You're pushing the boundaries of what you can do. And you can even make it fun. Many years ago, I admired the quarterback Michael Vick's throwing motion. And because he threw left-handed and these nice, tight, pretty spirals, it was so appealing to me. It was almost mesmerizing. And that motion made me want to do what he did. Not so much the running around, doing the extremely athletic things that he did, but just the way he threw the ball. I wanted to be able to do the same thing. So I started emulating him. Quite literally, I would begin to throw left-handed. And in the beginning, it was very awkward and frustrating. I simply would just throw it and it would come out just so uncoordinated. And as the frustration built, eventually I began to go over, how do I throw with my right arm? And then I would break it down, piece by piece. What goes on in my brain when I do this? What type of motion am I making? All the little things that I do when I throw with my right arm. So I would go over the throwing motion with my right arm with no ball to allow my brain to understand what I was doing. Then I told myself, now just do the same thing in the opposite direction, which was with my left arm. I slowly did the throwing motion with my left arm and no ball. And then after so many reps, I eventually got into a rhythm and started gaining confidence. Then I gradually moved up, making the arm motion faster and faster. I was ingraining this preconditioned response. Even though I naturally was not left-handed, I could teach myself. Then I would do the same throwing motion with my right arm to see if it looked, and better yet, felt the same as the left. And it almost mirrored it. Eventually, I started throwing a tennis ball with my left arm against a wall to get more reps. Then I would move back further and further until I felt confident throwing a football with my left. And I was eventually able to do it relatively well. Not as strong as with my right arm, but I saw the progress that I made. I would be consciously going over the throwing motion mechanics until it just felt right. As I went through this process, I literally was thinking about the different part of my brain that I was using, and it gave me more confidence in myself in general. Then this gave me the idea, if I can throw with my left, well, maybe I can write with my left hand too. So I did the same process of learning how to throw with my left. I would go slow, being conscious of the little things, and I too got relatively good at it. Still not as strong as writing with my right hand and slower, but I was doing okay. I have yet to have anything happen in my right hand or arm to force me to use my left one, but now I'm prepared enough that I can do it if I have to. I even use my left hand to hold my utensil while I eat. I use it to control my mouse on my computer. So it just shows we can make progress when we're committed to it. When you have your mindset on a certain goal or thing that you're trying to achieve. And you can do the same or something similar that gets you prepared in case you lose the ability to do something. Yes, it's going to be uncomfortable, but what's a little discomfort in the short term so you can counter the hardships you might come across? Most of the time, we only change out of necessity because we're forced to. When there's no choice other than having to get stronger in those weaker areas. And this relates to so many areas of our lives. If unwilling to change, change forces you to do so. Maybe not completely, but change will be needed to continue to be functionable. Not willing to change at work? Well, you might be out of a job. Not willing to change certain business practices? It could mean decline in sales or maybe even no longer being in business. Not willing to change how you treat people for the better? Well, it might mean damaging relationships you have and possibly driving people away. And sometimes losing what we once had is needed to help us make changes for the better. That pain is needed to remind us of what needs to be done. When you can get past that pain that makes you want to sit and be bitter about it, then you're on your way to getting stronger in other areas. It could be that you won't admit to others that you were wrong because of insecurities related to that, or you show no appreciation for those in your life because maybe others didn't show it to you or exactly how. The thinking of, that's just how I am, it might seem reasonable, but if you're unwilling to change for the people you care about, even if you have a hard time showing them, their patience for your shenanigans is going to run out. Maybe what's needed is losing them to get that pride, that ego, that selfish way to dissipate. But if you can realize sooner when you still have them, getting stronger in those weak areas or what might seem sensitive areas, then you can repair what might be damaged. Sometimes it can take drastic measures to grab your attention, to realize, hey, something's wrong. So be attentive. Avoid waiting before things deteriorate. Get out ahead of things while you still can do something about it. Unwilling to change on your part, then change will be made on the other side, on the things that are outside of your control. And this is a part of why losing something can be an opportunity to get stronger in other areas. Yes, this can seem insensitive, but better to experience this little bit of pain now before it's more painful later on. This can help cultivate more care, generosity, and just be more grateful for what you already have, to avoid falling into the thinking of, I wish I had a better house, or I wish I had a better car, and instead say, I'm happy the house that I have, where I can go to and rest and live my life. Or I'm thankful that I have the car that I do to be able to get around to where I need to. It's still okay to say, I would like to eventually upgrade to another house or upgrade to another car, as this helps to recognize what you already have and the ambition you still have for more, for better. And this is going to help you not get hung up on what you don't have and just enjoy the entire process along the way. We all know that at some point we will lose something or someone of significance. And the better that we can understand this, the better present we will be to be able to soak up what we have. And the things or the people that are no longer there for us, we have those memories to draw on that make them even more special. Nothing is forever. Everything is finite. So when things fade over time, like our abilities, what we once did that we no longer can do as well or at all, we learn to live with what we have. Maybe that athletic ability or strength is not what it once was, or how we look has changed. This can be a very unpleasant feeling, but know that that does not define you. It's a feature that changes. A very common thing that is almost dreaded is getting older. It's almost like it's some sort of disease. I commonly hear people say after a certain age, or they see they no longer look like they once did or have those abilities that they once did. They'll say, well, it's all downhill from here. What a way to throw in the towel. There's still the rest of your life to live. Do you want to say that at 40, at 50, at 60? No way. Do you want to live or just exist? Because there's a difference between the two. Living is about intention. The older we get is really an opportunity to gain knowledge and experience and wisdom to better use going forward. This is part of the things that I once had. The way things used to be is the best it's ever going to be. This keeps the focus on the past, longing for it, and missing out on what's right in front. That mirage of youth tricks us into thinking it was the best of times, but we forget how difficult that period can be. Trying to find our way, focus on so many things that drain you that are really irrelevant in the long run. We forget that with that youthfulness comes inexperience, lack of knowledge, making poor decisions that make the situations we find ourselves in so maddening. You know, I really admire Michael Jordan's mental state. For all the athletic ability he had, I think his mental side really elevated his entire game that propelled him to such great success. But Michael, it took him 7 years in the NBA before he led his team to his first NBA championship. And Michael even mentions how the years of experience, the more that he progressed, really benefited him in what exactly to do better to help his team win consistently. He was getting all the minute details that really made the difference in winning and losing. So while the older he got, certain physical abilities changed, the wisdom that he acquired allowed him to use the mental aspect to gain an advantage that he didn't need to consistently rely on his physical traits, but the information that he gained through certain things that were lost. You know, maybe a little bit of his ability. Obviously, he lost some good coaches. He lost some good teammates. But he was still able to use what he gained going forward. Use those past lessons going forward. Whether you decide to be proactive or not in developing those weak areas, know that it's possible to do so. And you might be surprised. It's not as hard as what you might think. It just requires a change in perspective to find ways to effectively process the loss and then pivot to finding solutions, finding what you can do about it right now and going forward. This is that can-do attitude that sets the tone for overcoming adversity that makes so many other areas of you much stronger, where you're multifaceted and not just a one-trick pony. It's really developing different strengths when setbacks occur. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're interested in more topics like this, become a Thriving Minds member at www.thrivingminds.live. It's your personal development resource so you can build that right mindset so you can live to thrive. All right, until next time.